Welcome to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Over this half hour, we'll be speaking with three individuals elected to focus on education. Italy Senator Liu is elected to focus on education as chair of the Senate Education Committee, and I am so glad you're on our program today, Senator Liu. And I want to speak with you about the revolution going on in public education in California. I personally think it's a revolution when you look at Common Core and the local control funding formula. Let's start with Common Core, which actually is happening nationwide.
Yes.
But how would you describe Common Core for us?
It's I would describe it as another look of how we deliver not only the education curriculum, but also how we expect our kids to react to answers, you know, and in our particular case, in the state of California, we are going to be doing our testing on tablets or iPads or something of similar.
And let's talk about that, because there is no doubt that California has gotten ahead of the game as it relates to Common Core and the element of standardized testing. Common Core, as I understand it, is supposed to kind of fully roll out in the next school year.
2 years, actually.
2 years.
Yes.
But in the spring, we are changing our standardized testing formula.
Yes.
And that's quick. I mean, we're going.
Well, actually, we're not, you know, we're going to give schools an opportunity to pre-test the test so it won't count.
Right.
And we're not asking them to test on the STAR test, which they have been testing on for the last 10 years or so.
Sure. Now, on the one hand, one could say that's quite innovative to move forward quickly. The flip side, though, is that's 1 year of data that's gone. I mean, we're not going to have that data. The parents won't get the results. The schools won't get the results. And in the backdrop, you have this idea that many school districts and many parent groups want standardized tests to be part of a teacher's evaluation. So you have this missing year. You know, some union contracts even now say that you need to rely on standardized tests. So how do we get around that?
Well, I don't know if we're going to get around it. We're just, we're just not going to, you know, deal with it this year. I mean, everybody will be put on notice that we are in a period of transition, and we're going to give, and the legislature gave schools another $1 billion plus.
1.25.
For a little technology or some professional development to teach teachers to teach differently. So we're hoping that, and we're hoping that this will be an incentive for them to really think about what they're doing in the classroom, to really think about that student, because it is about kids, and to really try to innovate collectively and to allow children to not only master subject matter, more than just memorizing, more than filling in the bubble, but really thinking about how did you get to that answer.
And I know that the testing will require that.
Yes.
And I want to talk about the testing in a broader sense. Common Core is here. The testing mechanisms will change. So, for example, if you answer question 1 correctly, question 2 will be different than if you answered it incorrectly, which seems quite, as I mentioned, innovative. What my fear is, and I've asked a few people this, I haven't heard of the SAT changing the way they test, or the ACT changing the way they test. And so I'm wondering if there's a disconnect between the Common Core standards, which with its own standardized testing formulas, and the ultimate standardized test, SAT or ACT.
Well, you bring up a very good point, and there is a disconnect. There's a disconnect between the curriculum of our university systems, our higher ed systems, and what's going on in the K-12. And I think what we're asking people to do is to really rethink how we move this whole process together. For instance, I just came from Citrus College prior to coming here, and we've had this discussion about how they are reaching out and doing a better relationship between what the K-12 system is doing, trying to understand Common Core, how it fits in with what they do. They have a partnership with Duarte High School, a college, you know, a beginning college kind of thing, and a program. And so, you know, all of us are going to be part of a bigger conversation and how we link all these pieces together.
And I think that's critical.
I think, yes, and I think it's really important, and I think it's exciting.
But here's the concern. Let's say you have a child in, I don't know, 8th, 9th grade. They're heading towards college, and so they start taking different standardized tests. and then in 2 or 3 years they take an SAT which hasn't adjusted, and they don't know how to take that type of test.
I think there's conversations going on with SAT and with folks who are have created the Common Core testing services, and that there will be stronger linkages between the two rather than falling off the cliff, so to speak, and kids not being able to bubble in the answer.
Right. And I'm wondering, though, I mean, you're the chair of the California State Senate. Is it appropriate for your voice to be heard on this?
Absolutely.
Because I do believe, look, we're California.
Right.
If the leader of the California State Senate in education starts pounding the pavement and saying, hello, SAT, Common Core is here, you need to look at how you take, offer these tests, they're going to listen.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
We'll start pounding.
Start pounding. We're going to make that happen because we don't want to leave kids behind or leave kids with anxious feelings.
I want to shift gears, if I may, and speak with you about another revolution. And as my pen goes flying, and I won't need a pen soon because I'll have a tablet, and that's the local control funding formula.
Yes, we're excited.
Boy, that is a change. I mean, that is a real change. We used to have all these categoricals where the money had to be spent for this category, over 50, maybe 60. Those are gone.
Right.
Those are gone. Maybe 10 categoricals left, I don't know, 5 or 10?
Yeah, less than 10.
Yeah, whatever it is.
Right.
And so, has LCFF started?
It will this coming year.
Okay, so we're in the midst of it.
We're in the midst of it, yes. The Department of Education is in the middle of writing the rules and regulations of it. They've already come up and said that school districts need to be presenting plans beginning next March. They have till June to finish off their plans. And it's going to force school districts to really involve their parents and the community in with the teachers and the administrators into forming a plan which is reflective of the needs of their kids and the community.
Right, and that's one of the unrequited benefits of LCFF is the discretion that these school boards will have. The other element, though, is the way funding will be handed out. So there will be a base grant, which I understand takes us to pre-recession levels. Is that right? Or
well,
near?
over
a few years it gets us there.
Well, we all passed, or some of us, we all passed Prop 30, so it gave us a 6-year hiatus in terms of getting our economy or economics back to something more normal. Right. But when the terrible part of it is when those monies go away after 6 years, and if our state economy has not bounced back, then we're going to be in trouble.
But aside from that, though, there's also these bumps.
Yes.
If the school district educates high numbers of English language learners, foster kids,
they get extra resources.
Economic disadvantage.
Right.
And
foster kids.
Yeah, intuitively feels good. But what about a more affluent district?
Well, I mean, we talked about that, and we did get the ability. There were some of us who are really concerned about that, so we're able to bump up the base. We were able to bump up the base a little bit so that at the end of 6 years, we will be back at pre-recession levels at 2007-8, which means that we have lost the 11 years of moving forward.
Yeah.
It's awful.
Let me, as we conclude, ask you quickly about the community school strategy. I know you're passionate about that.
Yes.
Tell us about it.
Well, it's just when we were just talking about LCFF funding, this is what we're talking about. We're talking about a school taking a look at its needs in a larger context and forming partnerships to help all of our kids and families thrive. It's pretty basic.
Simple.
It's a strategy. It's not a model. So it varies from wherever you go. And we just came back from a 3-day bus tour of the state of California.
You've done that before. You've done a poverty tour. I know you enjoy those.
Yes. Well, last year was poverty based on food insecurity. And this year is poverty based on what can the community do to help our neediest kids.
Senator Liu, thank you for joining us. She's a member of the California State Senate. When we come back, we'll be speaking with John Martin. He is the board president of the Pasadena Community College District. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest, John Martin, he is president of the Board of Trustees for Pasadena City College, and congratulations is in order. PCC recently opened its first satellite in Rosemead. Tell us all about it.
Well, I'm thrilled to tell you about it because this has been a dream of mine for many years. Having attended PCC first as a student and living in the Rosemead, Temple City area, and now as, of course, the trustee from Temple City Rosemead. So the campus is located on Rosemead Boulevard, just kitty corner from Rosemead High School.
Perfect.
There's 13 classrooms plus a complete bookstore and administrative, and eventually we hope a child development center.
And what's nice is that complex had been used for education in the past.
It is a win-win-win.
Give us
this
the
is
three
a
wins.
Total win. It's owned by the Almani Union High School District, and we've entered into a lease with them, so there's some revenue going back to the high school district.
Nothing wrong with that?
It's a relatively new building. It's probably just about 10 years old, and they've kept it in just meticulous condition.
They no longer needed the building?
Well, the funding for adult ed is a little bit different for the K-12s.
A little bit.
And so, you know, they unfortunately had to do some closing of campuses. And so we were fortunately right there and waiting and saw an opportunity. Originally, we weren't quite revved up to open it as quickly as we did.
Right.
But recently this year, with the new state budget, the community colleges have been awarded more funding for students. And particularly, PCC is focused on what we call the core educational courses. So we have been guaranteeing all the high school seniors in the entire Pasadena Community College District, that includes from Glendale to Almani.
It's a very large district.
Very large district. That we would guarantee them their first year at PCC, their math course that they need, their English course that they need. We created a pathways program so they can get through PCC expeditiously in the right number of semesters. And I got to tell you, this is all part of this.
Absolutely.
Because what we've been able to do now with this gorgeous facility that from the Almani High School District is create a little mini PCC right there in Rosemead, right on Rosemead Boulevard, close to the freeway in Rosemead High School. And so we're offering your core math courses, your core English, your history, your psychology, all the core courses that new students would need to
What's
get
also
their
nice is I have to think that some of the high school students at Rosemead, the ones that may be more advanced, they could cross the street.
They just walk right across the street. I mean, you got the high school, you got PCC, and you got In-N-Out. I mean, between those three,
what more could you ask for?
The world is covered.
The world is
if you're a high school student in that area, we're getting a tremendous sign up. Because of the funding, we had to open it a little sooner than we had originally planned, so it just recently opened. We were thrilled that we're opening with probably someplace north of 70 to 75% of total capacity booked in the classes, and that was on a very, very short notice. There's obviously a lot of Rosemead and Temple City and people around that area coming to this center, so that's been marginally successful. It will in the future open up more of those same courses on our main campus for the students that live closer to the main campus. Those who live down in the Temple City, Rosemead, Almani area know how long it takes to get from that area to PCC. And
as the crow flies, it's not that far. But, you know, with LA traffic,
it's 20, 30 minutes, and that's just if you have a car. So this is just tremendous blessing all the way around to everybody. We brought you a map that you could see, and the other beauty of that is that you see East LA and PCC and Rio Hondo, and then right there in the middle is this big service area that just had difficulty getting to all three of those is now PCC Rosemead.
Well, congratulations. You mentioned core classes, and that brings up a very interesting issue, and that's the question of how do we get kids to take the classes they need, which will allow them to matriculate to 4U University. Now, we know during the recession it became very difficult because sections were being dropped because of budget cuts. Times are better, and so sections are being added. But in the midst of all of this, your colleagues at Long Beach City College proposed that, initially the proposal was that all community college districts have the ability to create what we know as intersession courses. Winter session, could even be summer session, for those core classes, but only at a non-resident rate. The bill ultimately was signed by the governor, but there's a pilot program for 6 community college districts. And Long Beach obviously is one of them, so is PCC.
Well,
which
PCC
is interesting.
Did get named in that.
Right.
The college has not really taken an official position on that 2-tier system. The college has taken a little different approach.
Right.
We have aggressively reached out our hand to all our feeder high schools. And we are working with the counseling centers of all the feeder high schools, and we have put numerous efforts into offering the basic math and basic English courses. Now, some of those are your English 1. Some of those are your lead-up course to English 1 because students take tests to see where they place. But as I mentioned earlier, we're guaranteeing every freshman that they will get, wherever they place, we will have a course ready for them at PCC or PCC Rosemead, now will help, that will help them get those courses. And by trying to reach out with the high schools and work with counseling, we're trying to show even 8th graders in our district that this is what you need to do in your local high school so that you can do this at PCC and then quickly transfer immediately to wherever you want to go.
So it would appear, based upon what you say, obviously if you're making that promise that you will provide, the district will provide the core classes in the first year, that intersession is not necessarily necessity.
The intersession, you know, we had an intersession before we went back to a more traditional calendar, and there's some issues with the intersession that we found were very difficult, actually for our own students. You get a lot of university students like to come back and take a class, not necessarily your own.
Sure.
Sometimes students that are struggling in a math course that would normally run for 12 or 14 weeks, and now you're going to crunch it down and make them come multi-days a week for long hours and try to get it, that's counterproductive. So using the traditional calendar, working with our feeder schools, offering and putting an emphasis on the core courses like we've been doing, creating the pathway programs that says here's a block and here's how you can, I say it's the Costco of getting through community college. You kind of sign up for a block in your area of interest, and PCC makes sure that semester after semester the courses are there for you.
And arguably, given that the state budget is in much better shape than it was, it will be easier for PCC and other community college districts to provide that pathway.
Absolutely.
Because you heard the stories, kids taking 3, 4, 5 years to get out of community college.
No, it's
not because they're lazy,
tragic.
They just couldn't get the classes they needed.
Prior to the increase in state funding, we made it an emphasis at PCC to really engage this pathways and to reach out to our feeders to create this pathway plan that takes them right through, knowing how difficult it was to get into classes. And so now that there is more funding, we have a chance to open PCC Rosemead. We're looking at maybe some other satellites in the future.
What about
it's even better.
Another college? I mean, literally another college.
Well, in some, this is, in some ways, PCC Rosemead is just going to be a wonderful beta test, because included at this site not only are the core classes, but there's counseling and there's many of the student support services that you see.
Right.
I can't say enough about how beautiful the campus is. It doesn't.
And it's next to In-N-Out.
I mean, next to In-N-Out.
What more could you ask
That wasn't
for?
talking about that beauty. I was talking about, it's got a 2-story glass window that looks out on Mount Wilson and an open lobby. It looks like a mini college campus.
I want to congratulate you. I want to thank you. And when we come back, we're going to speak with someone. I bet he's a friend of yours. His name is Tony Ramos. He is a school board member in the Garvey School District in the Rosemead area. I'm Brad Pomerance. It's Charter California Edition. Welcome back to Charter California Edition. I'm Brad Pomerance. Our guest is Tony Ramos. He is the president of the Garvey School District, which is a K-8 district in basically the Rosemead area. Yeah, is that right?
Mainly encompasses Rosemead, but part of San Gabriel and part of Monterey Park.
And what's remarkable about your school district is that in the middle of this recession, over the last 4 years, your school district has seen its scores increase.
Yes.
How did that happen, Mr. Ramos?
Yes,
Mr. President, how did you do that?
Well, I think it's a combination of a lot of factors. One, definitely we have a great teachers and great staff.
Right.
But I think a lot of it had to do with the leadership in the school district. You know, we got a new superintendent about 3 years ago, and a lot of things have changed. The policies have changed. We've had more accountability, better evaluations of teachers, and overall we've been looking at programs and seeing what programs work and which ones don't, and implementing new programs.
And you mentioned accountability.
Yes.
And it would appear that as a result of the way California will be funding education, that you will have the opportunity for more responsibility, therefore more accountability through what's known as the local control funding formula. You know as well as anyone that there had been a whole host of what's called categorical requirements, that the state required that certain money be spent on certain programs, and you had to meet these stringent standards. But with the local control funding formula, most of those categoricals go away. There's some, but it goes from like 50 or 60 to under 10.
Yes.
How does that feel?
That is great, I think, for all school districts, not just our own, because I think the schools or the local schools can actually use the money the way they see fit for the programs that they need. And sometimes these categorical programs, you have to just use the money, and it might not be best utilized.
So what are the needs, for example, in your district?
Our district has many needs. Mostly we need a lot of help in English language learners, because we have a lot of English language learners.
And it's interesting you mentioned that, because it helps that the local control funding formula manages its mechanisms to provide those monies to schools through looking at a few categories. The number of English language learners, the number of foster children, the number in economically disadvantaged areas. As you know, every school district will get a base grant, but school districts will get bumps based upon the numbers of kids in those three categories.
We definitely had a big structural deficit, and with this Proposition 30 that passed the local control funding formula,
So you combine all those together.
We're looking at reducing that structural deficit about $2.8 million. So it really makes a big, huge difference in our district.
And as I understand it, money will flow to each child that falls into those categories. But then if a school district has about 55% of students in those categories, another grant comes in, and Garvey does fall into that classification.
Yes, we do. And we're definitely going to be taking advantage of those funds to help out our kids.
I want to also talk about scores and test scores, because as you indicated, scores have been going up. But you know as well as anyone that with the implementation of what we know as Common Core, the way students will be tested is not going to be that standard bubbleized formula that has been so popular for generations.
Yes.
And in fact, in the spring, California is already on the is planning on actually changing its standardized testing formula. How are you going to manage that?
Well, I think we've started implementing a lot of things. We've already been working 3 years on Common Core and getting everybody ready. But I think one of the big advantages that our district has is 2 years ago we started a new program where all students in the middle schools now have access to a one-to-one laptop, so they could take their laptop home, use it at school. It also comes with free 4G access for them. So even if they don't have internet at home, they can actually use that 4G access to access.
That's huge, because please.
And I know a lot of the Common Core will be testing on computers and getting the kids ready to be able to test on computers. So I think we have a little bit of an advantage head start on that.
Yeah, there's no doubt that Common Core is looking to move public education into the 21st century with the adoption of technology. Now, you mentioned these laptops. I'm sure that you heard that LAUSD had some challenges when they handed out some technology. Fortunately, those problems didn't beset the Garvey School District. But how is the adoption of technology going?
I come from a technology background. Right now, currently, I work for Panda Restaurant Group in the corporate office in the IS department. So we manage over 1,500 restaurants, computers, corporate office.
So you know from technology.
So I know technology is hard to adopt, but we have employees at the store level that never used a computer, and we guide them through using it. And this is the same concept that we need to use at schools with teachers and students.
But here's the thing. I'm sure the kids will do fine.
Yeah.
It's not the kids I'm worried about. It's the teachers.
Yeah.
I mean, my kids are teaching me how to use modern technology. And, and it's not easy. I mean, for kids, it's all they know. So what is Garvey doing to help the teachers learn the technology?
Well, definitely every teacher now has a personal computer in the classroom. And one of the things that when I came into the school district, email was even rarely used.
When?
This was 4 years ago.
Oh my God.
So one of the things that I brought to the board, I said, you know what, our communication has to go through email because we need to get the teachers enrolled in using computers and communicating through computers. And now, after we've implemented the new email system using Gmail, and all the teachers are using the email system to communicate, and now just using Google Docs and various other programs. So I think little by little,
to have a technology guy on the board because it can be a very intimidating process.
Yes.
And I know that all you want to do is alleviate the pain of those teachers who are trying to move through modern technology. I do want to ask you, sir, and I hope it's okay that I go there. We've talked about this on our program, that Garvey has had a difficult couple of years with relations between its school board, its community. There's been a lot of contention surrounding the superintendent. How is it going now?
Well, I think the contention has kind of died out because I think pretty much everybody knows that the superintendent's contract will be up at the end of this year, and it doesn't. We are not planning on renewing at least the contract. So that that push to get her out of the district is not necessary anymore because we all know
there were recall petitions circulating over this issue, and the teachers union was upset. I mean, it was really stunning the amount of acrimony that was coming out of this one issue. And the amount of coverage it was getting. I mean, we were talking about it. There was discussions in local news channels. I mean, the San Gabriel Tribune was covering it, even the LA Times. I mean, this really took on a life of its own. So in the final analysis, you feel as if those days are behind you? And I ask, how's the school board getting along? I mean, there was this 3-2 split.
Well, even though we have our disagreements, the disagreements actually with my former teacher, Bob Rouge, and
he was your teacher.
So he's
now a school board member, and he was your teacher.
Yeah, but we have our disagreements, and we understand that people have disagreements, but we still talk and we're still friends.
Right.
And even though we're running a campaign now, but we still communicate.
Which is good to hear, because some folks in Washington, I must say, they may need to take a lesson about contention and still being able to be friends on the other side of the debate. So things are going better both because of Prop 30 and because everyone seems to be getting along. I mean, is it just it's a new day?
Yes, I think that the biggest challenge right now is the teachers union is not happy with our decisions, our previous decisions. So of course they're campaigning against us or bringing it.
We'll have to see what happens. Okay, but you'll come back. His name is Tony Ramos. He is the president of the Garvey School District. I'm Brad Pomerance. Thank you so much for watching Charter California Edition.